The night was heavy on the alien city. Tall towers made of black stone blocked the weak light of the moons. Strange fires burned in metal bowls, but they gave no warmth. The streets were cold, silent, and cruel. In the corner of this city, a woman walked fast, her arms holding something wrapped in thin cloth. Her eyes were red from crying. Her steps were weak, but her voice was louder than the wind. Please, please help me, my baby is dying. Her words echoed, but doors stayed shut. Windows closed. Faces hid in the shadows. The woman was not human. Her skin shone like silver under the moonlight, and her long dark hair was tangled with dust. She was one of the people of this world, people who once had much but now only kept fear in their hearts. Her baby coughed in her arms, a sound sharp and painful. The little body shook and the cloth became wet with sweat. She pressed the baby close to her chest and begged again. I only need medicine. Please, anyone, help me. She stopped at a tall metal door and knocked hard. The sound of her fists was loud, like thunder on steel. A shadow moved inside. She saw glowing eyes through a small crack. My child is sick, she cried. Please give me medicine or he will die. The eyes looked at her cold and without pity. A voice came, flat and hard. Go away. We cannot waste our supplies. The crack closed. The door stayed shut. The woman's knees grew weak. She fell on the stone floor, holding the baby tight. Tears ran down her face, dropping to the ground. She whispered, broken and small, Why will no one help me? The baby made a weak sound, a breath that seemed like it would be the last. Her heart broke. She looked up at the sky with empty eyes. That was when she heard it. A voice, not from the houses, not from the cold-hearted people. A voice from the shadows of the street, I will help you. She turned. A figure stood at the edge of the torchlight. His body was thin, covered with a worn coat. His face was pale compared to the others. His eyes were human eyes. A human. The people of this city often whispered about humans. Some said they were weak. Some said they were foolish. Others said they were dangerous because they cared too much. The woman stared at him, surprised, almost afraid. You will help me? She asked in a trembling voice. He walked closer, his boots echoing on the stone. His eyes were steady, his steps calm. He carried a small bag on his shoulder, old but well kept. Yes, he said softly. Show me the child. The mother pressed the baby closer. Her heart fought inside her chest. Could she trust him? Was this a trick? But she looked again into her baby's face, pale and weak, breath shallow like whispers. She had no choice. She opened the cloth and showed the baby. The human knelt down carefully as if afraid of breaking something fragile. He looked at the child, touched the forehead and frowned. Fever, he said. His voice was quiet but sure. Very high fever. From his bag he took out small bottles and old instruments. His hands were quick but gentle. The mother watched with wide eyes, hope and fear mixed together. Around them other shadows moved. Some people had stepped out to see. They whispered to each other, Look, a human. Helping her? Why would he waste medicine on someone not his kind? Foolish creature. He will fail. But the human did not listen. He poured a few drops of liquid into a small spoon. He looked at the mother. This may help. It is not much, but it may give him strength to fight. The mother's hands shook as she took the spoon. She looked at him again. His eyes were not cold like the others. They were full of something different, something she had not seen in a long time. Compassion. Her tears fell again, but this time they carried hope. I trust you, she whispered. She gave the medicine to her baby. For a moment, nothing happened. The child's small body shook, a weak cry escaping his lips. The mother gasped, fear filling her again. The human placed his hand on her shoulder. Wait. Give it time. The street was silent. The only sound was the faint breathing of the baby. Seconds passed like hours. The mother closed her eyes, praying, begging silently. Then, the baby's breaths became steadier. The shaking slowed. The color of life began to return to the small face. The woman opened her eyes wide. She looked at her child, then at the human. He is breathing better, she whispered. The human gave a small nod, but his eyes stayed serious. This is only the beginning. He will need more care. But he has a chance now. The mother clutched her child, joy and disbelief in her heart. She looked at the human, her voice breaking. You saved him. No one else answered, but you. From the shadows, the whispers grew louder. Angry voices. Fearful voices. He broke the law. Humans are forbidden to heal others. Call the guards. The woman froze. The human stood up, his face calm but firm. He looked at the approaching shadows of armored figures. The guards were coming. The mother's joy turned to terror again. Would the man who saved her child now be taken away? The part ended there. Suspense filled the night air. Only one truth was clear. When the world turned its back, only a human answered her cry. The guards' steps echoed on the stone street. Their heavy boots struck the ground like drums of doom. The people moved back into the shadows, but their eyes stayed fixed on the scene. A human kneeling beside an alien child, this was a crime in their world. The mother clutched her baby close, heart racing. The child was breathing more steadily now, but the danger had not ended. Another danger was coming, iron law and punishment. The human did not move. He stood slowly, calm, as if he had been expecting this moment. His coat brushed against the dirt. His eyes met the guards without fear. One of the guards shouted, his voice deep and harsh. "You human! Step away from the woman." The human said nothing. He looked once more at the mother and her child. In his gaze was a question, silent but strong. "Will you trust me again?" The mother's hands shook. Fear pressed against her chest like a blade. But she remembered the moment her baby had stopped shaking. She remembered how hope had returned because of him. Her lips moved without thinking. "He saved my child. You cannot take him." The guards laughed, cold and cruel. Saved? He broke the law. Humans are not allowed to heal. Humans are not allowed to touch our kind. The human finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. Life is life. A child should not die while help is possible. The words cut through the night. Simple, sharp, true. But the guards only grew angrier. Their hands went to their weapons. Blades made of glowing metal slid out with a hiss. The crowd whispered in fear.
Why does he not run?
He is only one human against the law. He will die. But the human did not run. Instead, he knelt again, opening his bag. His fingers searched through the small bottles, cloth, and tools. He pulled out another vial of medicine and a small wrapped bandage. He looked at the mother. "Your child is safe for now. But fever may return. You must keep him warm, give him water, and keep the medicine close. Do not fear the shadows. Fear only giving up." The mother nodded, tears still shining in her eyes. She held the medicine like it was gold. The guard stepped forward. "Enough, you will come with us." The human rose, tall though thin, and faced them. The torches threw firelight across his face. His eyes burned, not with anger, but with quiet strength. "You call compassion a crime," he said softly, "but I will not stop." The guards gripped their weapons tighter. But for a strange moment, they hesitated. There was something unsettling about this man. Something that made them pause. The crowd watched, silent, caught between fear and curiosity. No one had ever seen a human speak like this before. No one had ever seen a human stand against the law. The baby coughed again, weak but alive. The sound broke the silence. The mother cried out, "Please, don't take him!" "He saved my baby. I beg you." But the guards grabbed the human's arms. Their iron gloves locked around him like chains. The human did not resist. He allowed them to pull him away. His eyes stayed on the mother and child. "Remember," he said, his voice carrying through the street. "Hope is stronger than fear." The mother tried to follow, but the guards shoved her back. She fell, clutching her child, watching helplessly as they dragged the human toward the council's hall. The crowd began to whisper again. Some mocked him. "A fool. He will be punished." Humans never learn. But others were quiet. Something about his words, his actions, lingered in their minds like a spark waiting to grow. The mother sat on the ground, rocking her child. The baby's breathing was slow but steady. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "He gave you life. I will not forget." Far ahead, the human was taken into the great hall of judgment. The walls were tall, carved with symbols of power. Inside, the council waited, leaders with hard faces and colder hearts. The guards threw him to the floor. One council member leaned forward, his eyes like burning coals. "You are accused of breaking sacred law. You are accused of giving aid where aid is forbidden. Do you deny it?" The human lifted his head, calm, his voice clear. "I do not deny it. I gave medicine to a child who was dying." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some voices scorned, others whispered in unease. "Why?" another council member demanded. "Why risk your life for one who is not your kind?" The human's answer was simple. Because no law can command me to ignore a child's cry. The hall shook with his words. Anger rose, but so did something else: confusion, doubt, even fear. The council leader struck his staff on the floor. Silence! You will face punishment. Compassion does not excuse lawbreaking. The guards pulled him to his feet, ready to take him to the dark cells below. But before they could move, a small sound broke the air. The baby's cry. It carried from outside the hall through the doors, soft yet powerful. A living proof of the human's act. The mother's voice followed, desperate but strong. He saved my child. Without him, I would be mourning tonight. How can life itself be against your law? The council wavered. The guards froze. The human stood still, silent, his eyes fixed on the leaders. Suspense hung heavy in the hall. Would they punish him, or would the truth of his act shake their stone hearts? The answer was not yet clear, but one thing was certain: this was no ordinary man. This was a human who chose compassion over fear, and that choice had already begun to change everything. The council chamber was heavy with silence. The guards still held the human, but their grip had loosened. The baby's cry outside had touched something even in their armored hearts. The mother's voice echoed in the hall, trembling but strong. He gave my child life. You call it a crime, but to me, it is a miracle. The council members exchanged uneasy looks. Some frowned, others lowered their eyes, yet the leader struck his staff again. Enough. Take him to the holding cell. His trial will be decided at dawn. The guards obeyed. They dragged the human away, down into the dark corridors under the council hall. The air was damp, smelling of stone and iron. The door of the cell slammed shut behind him. Inside, the human sat on the cold floor. His bag had been taken, his hands bound with rough rope. But his eyes stayed calm. He closed them, listening. Faintly, he could still hear the baby's soft cries above. Alive, breathing, fighting, a fragile hope. For a moment, the human's thoughts drifted far away, to another place, another time. He remembered a child of his own, a small girl with bright eyes who once held his hand and laughed at the stars. She had been sick too long ago. He had tried everything to save her, but there had been no medicine then, no cure. He had watched her life fade, powerless, broken. That pain had never left him. It was carved into his soul. And now in this strange city under foreign moons, he had faced the same test again. This time he had saved a child. This time he had not failed. His lips curved into the faintest smile, a shadow of peace even in chains. Above in the city streets, the mother sat with her baby. She had found a small corner by a fire pit where she could rest. Her hands held the vial of medicine the human had given her. She looked at it as if it were treasure. The baby's fever was not gone, but it was weaker. His breaths were slow but steady. He still fought, and every breath was a gift. Hold on, she whispered, kissing his small forehead. Hold on, my love. He gave you a chance. Other women passed by, staring. Some shook their heads in disapproval, but others stopped, curious, drawn by the sight of life where death had almost won. Is it true? One asked softly. A human saved your child? The mother lifted her eyes, filled with both fear and fire. Yes, when everyone else turned away, only he answered. The whispers spread like wind through dry grass. In the markets, in the alleys, in the towers, rumors grew. The human broke the law. The human healed a dying child. The human dared what no one else would. In the dark cell, the human leaned back against the wall. The sound of approaching footsteps broke his thoughts. The door creaked open and a guard stepped inside. But this guard's face was different. He did not wear the sneer of cruelty. His eyes carried doubt. You are reckless, human, the guard muttered. Do you know what the council will do to you? The human looked up, steady. I know, but the child lives. The guard's jaw tightened. He wanted to speak, but no words came. At last he turned and left, the door closing again. The human closed his eyes once more. His heart was steady, though the weight of punishment loomed ahead. For him, it had never been about law. It had always been about life. Night deepened. The moons crossed the sky. The mother stayed awake beside her baby. She remembered the human's voice, his warning. The fever may return. Keep him warm, give him water, and keep the medicine close. She followed every word. She wrapped her child tighter, gave him drops of water, and whispered prayers into the firelight. At times the fever rose again, making her heart tremble, but the medicine held it down. Her baby fought on, fragile yet unbroken. When the first light of dawn touched the city walls, the sound of horns filled the air. The trial was near. The council would decide the human's fate. The mother rose, weak but determined. She would not stay silent. She carried her child wrapped tight against her chest and walked toward the council hall. Crowds were already gathering. The rumor had grown into fire. People wanted to see. People wanted to know if compassion could truly be punished. Inside the hall, the human was brought forward again. His hands were still bound, but his eyes were free. He stood tall before the council. The leader raised his staff. "Human, you broke the sacred law. You interfered in matters that were not yours. You gave medicine to one of our kind. For this you must answer." The human's voice was calm, even as the chamber shook with tension. "I will answer. I saw a child dying. I heard a mother's cry. I acted because I am human. That is my only crime." The words cut through the hall. Some of the council looked away. Some clenched their fists. The mother stepped forward suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. "He is not guilty. He saved my child's life. Look, my son lives." She unwrapped the cloth just enough to show the small face. The baby's eyes were half open, his breath weak but steady. Gasps filled the hall. Even the hardest counselors could not deny the truth. The child had survived. The leader struck his staff again, but his voice no longer sounded as strong. "This changes nothing. The law is the law." The human met his gaze. "Then your law is broken, because no law should forbid hope." The words rang out, powerful and unshaken. Suspense filled the air. The crowd outside roared with whispers, with anger, with questions. Something was breaking in the city that had been solid for generations, and all of it had begun with one fragile hope. The great hall trembled with noise. Whispers ran through the crowd like restless winds. Some eyes burned with anger, others shone with fear, but many held something new. Doubt. Doubt in the law. Doubt in the council. At the center of it all stood the human, hands bound yet unbroken. Beside the guards, he looked small, but his calm eyes and steady voice had made him greater than any chains. The mother's voice cut through the noise. "My baby lives because of him. Look at my son. Look with your own eyes." She lifted the child high. The baby's breaths were weak, but they were real. The little chest rose and fell. A soft cry came, fragile yet full of life. For the crowd, it was more powerful than any speech. A living proof. A miracle. The council leader slammed his staff against the floor. Sparks of light flew and silence returned. His voice thundered. "This human is no savior. He is a danger. If we allow his actions, then our laws mean nothing. Today he healed a child. Tomorrow what will he do? Challenge our rule? Spread his weakness among us?" The guards nodded, but their eyes betrayed unease. Even they could not ignore the baby's soft whimpers. The human spoke, his voice calm but sharp as steel. "You call kindness weakness. You call compassion a threat. But tell me, what strength is there in letting a child die?" The words hit like stones. Some counselors flinched. Others scowled. The leader pointed at him with fury. "You are human. You do not belong here. Your kind are fragile, reckless, dangerous. You cannot understand our ways." The human's eyes glowed in the firelight. "Perhaps. But I understand this. Life is sacred. Any child, human or not, deserves a chance." The mother stepped forward again, trembling but fearless. "If he is punished, then punish me too, because I begged for help." And he was the only one who answered. The chamber grew restless. Murmurs filled the air, louder, stronger. The law had never been questioned like this before. And then something unexpected happened. The baby cried again, but this time the sound was not weak. It was louder, sharper, filled with breath and strength. The mother gasped. She looked down at her child, her eyes wide with wonder. He is stronger." The baby moved his tiny hands, gripping the cloth. His skin, once pale, now glowed faintly with color. The fever had broken. The medicine was working. The crowd gasped as one. Whispers turned into shouts. "A miracle! The child lives. The human saved him." The guard stepped back in shock. Even the council members leaned forward, disbelief on their faces. The leader struck his staff again, but his voice shook. "Silence. This means nothing. One life does not erase the law." But the people no longer listened to him. Their eyes were on the mother, on the child, and on the human who stood chained yet unbowed. It was then that another sound cut through the noise. A harsh metallic roar. The doors of the hall burst open. From the shadows marched a new group, soldiers of the High Guard, the most feared in the city. Their armor shone like black iron, and their weapons glowed with deadly light. The leader straightened, relief flashing in his eyes. The High Guard has come. They will restore order. The people fell silent in fear. Even whispers died away. The High Guard were not like common soldiers. They obeyed no hearts, only commands. Their captain stepped forward, his voice cold as stone. This trial is over. The human is guilty. He will be taken at once. The guards at the human side moved to obey, but something strange happened. For a heartbeat, they hesitated. They looked at him, then at the baby, then back again. Doubt was growing even in their hardened hearts, the captain noticed. His eyes narrowed. You hesitate? Do you doubt the law? The guard said nothing. But silence was answer enough. The human raised his head. His voice was steady even with death standing before him. You fear me because I chose compassion. You fear me because you know the truth, that no law can stop hope once it has begun, the captain snarled. Hope cannot protect you. Hope cannot fight soldiers. The human's gaze did not break. Perhaps not. But hope can change a world. The mother clutched her child tighter. Her voice, though shaking, rose again. If he dies, then let the world know it was not disease that killed my child, but your law. Her words struck harder than any weapon. The crowd erupted louder than before. Shouts, cries, voices of anger and defiance filled the chamber. The council leader's face turned pale. He slammed his staff again, but this time the sound was drowned by the voices of the people. For the first time, fear shone in the eyes of those who ruled. The baby's cry grew stronger still, echoing through the hall. It was as if the small life itself was defying the law. The High Guard raised their weapons. Sparks of deadly light filled the air. The crowd gasped. The mother screamed, but the human stood tall, chains heavy on his arms, eyes unbroken. In that moment, he looked less like a prisoner and more like a leader. The hall was on the edge of chaos. A miracle had been born in the arms of a mother, but with it came the threat of war, the threat of change, and at the center of it all stood one human. The great hall was no longer silent. The voices of the people filled the air like a storm. Some shouted in anger at the council. Others cried out in fear of the High Guard. The baby's strong cries echoed above them all, a sound that no law could silence. At the center stood the human, bound in chains, yet unbroken. His calm eyes faced the black-armored soldiers. The captain of the High Guard raised his hand. Clear this hall. The crowd has forgotten respect. The law will be carried out now. The people stepped back in fear, but none left. They wanted to see what would happen. They wanted to see if one human would fall or if one human could stand against all. The mother's voice trembled, but it rose again. If you take him, you must take me too. He is no criminal. He is my child's savior. Her baby whimpered, then cried louder as if adding his own voice to hers. The captain sneered. You speak like a fool. The law is not swayed by tears. The human finally spoke, his voice steady, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Do not call her a fool. She has more courage than all of you with your weapons and armor. The captain's face darkened. Silence, human. You stand alone. No one will protect you here. The human lifted his head. I have never stood alone. Wherever compassion lives, I am not alone. The words spread like fire through the hall. Whispers became voices. Voices became shouts. He speaks truth. The baby lives. Why should kindness be punished? The guards at his side trembled. Their grip on his chains grew weaker. Some looked at him with eyes full of doubt, even respect. The council leader slammed his staff again. His voice cracked with fury. Enough! You are human, a stranger, a weak creature. You have no right to question our law. The human met his gaze unshaken. Then your law is nothing but fear dressed as power. Gasps filled the hall. Never had such words been spoken in that place. The High Guard captain drew his glowing blade. Its light burned bright, aimed at the human's chest. You will pay for your insolence. The human did not flinch. Instead, he stepped forward, chains clinking. His eyes locked on the captain's. You call this strength? Threatening a man in chains? Then let me tell you what real strength is. Real strength is holding a dying child and refusing to give up. Real strength is answering a cry when everyone else turns away. The captain hesitated, blade still raised. His arm shook ever so slightly. The crowd erupted again, their voices rising like thunder. He is right. He saved a life. He stands with truth. The mother lifted her baby high once more. The child's cries filled the air louder than ever. alive, strong, defiant. The captain's hand trembled more. The weight of hundreds of eyes pressed against him. The law said one thing, but the truth before him said another. The council leader shouted in panic. "Strike him down! Strike him now!" But the captain could not move. His blade shook. His eyes burned with conflict. The human stood tall, his voice calm and clear. "You fear me because I am human, but you should fear the truth more. The truth is that kindness cannot be chained. Compassion cannot be silenced, and hope cannot be killed." The hall trembled with the roar of the people, no longer whispers, no longer quiet. The crowd shouted as one, "Let him go! Free the human! He is no criminal, he is a savior." The guards at the human's side finally dropped their hold. The chains slipped from their hands, clattering onto the stone floor. The council leader's face went pale. His voice cracked with rage. "You fools! He will destroy us all." The human turned his eyes to him, steady as stone. "I do not seek to destroy. I seek to heal. That is what you fear, that humanity's strength lies not in power but in compassion." The leader raised his staff to strike, but the mother stepped in front of the human, holding her baby close. "If you harm him, then strike me too, for without him my son would already be dead." The baby cried again, strong, alive, undeniable. The sound filled the hall with truth no one could deny. The captain of the high guard lowered his blade. Slowly he turned to the council leader. "I cannot strike him. Not after this." The hall froze. The leader's face twisted with fury. But the people roared with joy. They cheered, cried, and shouted until the walls shook. The human stood still, his chains hanging loose. He had not fought with weapons. He had not broken his bonds with strength. He had stood alone, yet not alone. He had stood with truth. The council leader's eyes burned with hate, but for the first time his voice trembled with fear. This human had not only saved a life. He had broken the silence of an entire world, and the world would never be the same again. The hall had never seen such chaos. Voices shook the pillars, feet pounded the stone, and the cry of a baby rang louder than the council's commands. For the first time in generations, the people were not silent. At the center stood the human, still bound in chains that now hung loose. His eyes were calm, though the air trembled with danger. The mother stood at his side, her child alive in her arms. The captain of the high guard lowered his blade. The council leader's face twisted in fury. "Have you lost your mind, Captain? Strike him down." The captain's voice was cold but not steady. "I cannot. The law tells me one thing, but my heart tells me another." The council leader slammed his staff, sparks flying. "Your heart is weak. Do you not see? If one human can break our law, then all our laws will be broken." The human finally spoke, his voice quiet, yet it carried through the noise. "No, your law is already broken. The moment it told you to ignore a child's cry, it stopped being justice. It became fear." The words cut deep. Even the counselors shifted uncomfortably. Their eyes moved from the leader to the human to the baby whose fragile life was proof of the truth. The leader shouted again, desperate. "This is a trial, and in this trial, compassion is no defense. The law is the law." The human raised his head, his voice steady as stone. "Then let this trial judge not me, but compassion itself. If you call compassion a crime, then let the people decide whether they will live by cruelty or by hope." The crowd roared. Their voices rose like a storm. "Hope, compassion. He saved a life." The council leader's hands shook on his staff. His power was slipping like sand through fingers. He turned to the counselors, his voice breaking. "Speak, condemn him. Restore our order." But the counselors hesitated. Some stared at the ground. Others looked at the baby, alive and breathing. One finally spoke, an old woman with silver eyes. "I have ruled here for many years. I have seen laws protect us, and I have seen laws destroy us. Today I saw a human do what none of us dared. He saved life where we would have let it die. If that is weakness, then perhaps we have been strong for too long." The hall gasped. A counselor had spoken against the law. The leader's face turned red with rage. "Traitor! You would let a stranger shame us?" But another counselor spoke, his voice firm. "I saw the child with my own eyes. The fever is broken. Our laws say humans are reckless, yet this one acted with more wisdom than all of us together. Perhaps our laws are wrong." The crowd erupted again, shouting, crying, calling for justice. The leader tried to silence them, but the storm of voices drowned him out. The human stood tall, chains at his feet, and spoke once more. You fear that if compassion spreads, your control will end. Perhaps it will. But ask yourselves, what is a world worth if it has no kindness left in it? Silence fell. The words hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. The mother stepped forward, holding her child high. My son breathes because of him. Would you punish a man for giving life? If so, then punish me too, for I begged him. But I will never call kindness a crime. The baby's cry echoed again, stronger than ever. It was like a voice of judgment from beyond law, beyond power. A fragile life shouting truth. The leader's staff shook in his hands. He saw fear in the eyes of his people. He saw hope in their voices. He saw his power breaking. No, he shouted. If you let this stand, then humans will rise among us. They will spread their weakness like disease. They will poison our order. The human's eyes locked on him. You call it poison. I call it humanity. The captain of the High Guard turned, his blade still in his hand but no longer raised. I swore to protect this city. I thought that meant following orders. But today, I see that protecting life is the greater duty. I will not strike him, the people cheered. Some guards dropped their weapons. The counselors argued among themselves, their voices cracking, no longer united. The leader stood alone now, his staff shaking. He raised it high, desperate to command the hall once more. This trial is not over. This city will not bow to human weakness. But before he could strike the floor, the people surged forward. Their voices, their steps, their anger became one. They had seen the truth. They had seen the miracle. And the law that once ruled them was now on trial itself. The human looked around him. He saw the mother's tears of gratitude, the child's fragile breath, the guards lowering their weapons, the people rising against fear. For the first time he felt it clearly. He was no longer just one man. He was a spark, and the spark had become fire. But fire brings both light and danger. The hall shook with the roar of the people. The council was divided. The leader was furious. The High Guard stood torn between orders and truth. The human stood calm, chains at his feet, his voice soft but unyielding. This trial is not mine. This trial belongs to your world. Will you choose fear, or will you choose compassion? Suspense hung in the air like a blade. The answer had not yet come. But the choice was no longer the council's alone. It belonged to everyone, and whatever choice they made, the world would never return to silence again. The dawn light crept through the high windows of the council hall. Dust and smoke swirled in the beams of gold, touching faces that were no longer silent. The people of the city stood shoulder to shoulder, filling the great chamber with restless energy. The sound of their voices shook the pillars. At the center, the human stood with chains broken at his feet. He did not raise his hands. He did not call for power. He simply stood, calm, steady, unshaken. The mother held her baby close. The child's breaths were stronger now, his cries louder. Every sound from the tiny lungs was a challenge to the old laws, a living proof of what compassion could do. The council leader's face was pale with rage. His staff trembled in his grip. You fools, he hissed. You cheer for weakness. You shout for hope. But hope will destroy you. The human met his eyes. His voice was soft, but it carried through the entire hall. No, fear destroys. Hope builds, the crowd roared. The walls themselves seemed to tremble with the force of their cries. The High Guard captain lowered his weapon and dropped it onto the floor. The sound echoed like thunder. One by one, other soldiers followed. The glow of their deadly blades faded. The counselors argued, their voices breaking. Some demanded the human's punishment, others called for change. But the people no longer waited for orders. They had chosen. The mother stepped forward, lifting her child high for all to see. Her voice rang clear. This child breathes because one human cared. Remember this. When law turned its back, only a human answered. Her words spread like fire through the hall. The people began to chant, their voices united. Human, human, human! The leader slammed his staff again, but the sound was lost in the storm of voices. His power was broken. The laws he had ruled with no longer held the hearts of the people. The human did not smile. He did not raise his voice. He only looked at the mother and the baby, and a shadow of peace touched his eyes. But inside he knew this was only the beginning. Hope had been born, but hope brings change, and change brings danger. The leader's face twisted with fury. He pointed his staff at the human. This is not the end. You think you have won? No. This city will tear itself apart because of you. You have planted rebellion. The human's reply was calm, steady, unbroken. No, I have planted compassion, and compassion will outlive your fear. The crowd erupted again, their chants filling the sky above the hall. The leader, defeated, turned away. His staff no longer commanded respect. His shadow seemed smaller than ever before. The mother fell to her knees before the human, tears running down her face. You saved my son. You gave me back his life. I will never forget. And neither will this city. The human bent down, helping her rise. His voice was gentle. Do not thank me. Thank your own courage. You cried out when no one listened. You kept faith when all doors closed. Your strength saved your child as much as mine. She shook her head, but her tears carried a smile. She looked at the crowd. He is right. Compassion does not belong to humans alone. It belongs to all of us if we choose it. The people roared in agreement. Hope had become something larger than one act. It had become a seed planted in every heart. The baby cried again, but this time it was strong, alive, fearless. The sound carried across the chamber like a bell announcing change. For the first time, the human allowed himself to breathe deeply. He looked at the people, at the soldiers laying down their weapons, at the counselors divided, at the mother clutching her living child. He had come here as a stranger, a wanderer with nothing but a small bag of medicine and memories of his own loss. Now he stood as something else. Not a hero, not a savior, but a reminder of what it meant to be human. He spoke once more, his words slow and simple, meant not only for the hall but for the world beyond it. One act of kindness can begin a storm. One spark can light a fire, and one life saved can remind us all that hope is worth fighting for. Silence followed, deep and heavy. The people listened, their hearts burning with a truth they could no longer deny. Outside, the first rays of sun touched the city's towers. The black stone walls, once cold and merciless, glowed with the light of morning. The streets that had turned the mother away now filled with voices calling for change. The leader had been right about one thing. The city would never be the same again. But it was not weakness that spread. It was not rebellion. It was the legacy of a human who chose compassion over fear. And though he was only one man, his choice had become a story. A story that would be told in whispers and songs, in firelight and in shadows, long after chains rusted and laws crumbled. The mother kissed her baby's forehead, tears shining on her cheeks. She whispered softly, as if speaking to the future itself. You live because of him. Never forget. Never let the world forget. The child, too young to understand, gripped her finger with tiny hands. Life pulsed in his touch, fragile yet unbreakable. The human looked once more at the crowd, at the mother, at the child. Then he turned his eyes to the rising sun. Hope had begun here. But hope must travel farther. His journey was not over. And as he walked out of the hall, unchained and unbowed, the voices of the people followed him, echoing through the streets, across the towers, into the sky itself. They did not chant for power. They did not chant for war. They chanted for something greater, for compassion, for humanity, for the legacy of one human who answered a cry when no one else would.